Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 94. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the acclaimed and celebrated Vermont author, Ray Perkins. Ray, thanks for joining us on this lovely Thursday afternoon or evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. You know what? Before we got on the air, we were just talking about how both of us, we from the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. Mm-hmm. We say the Vermonters, Vermont, and and it's it's interesting because, as you say, you started off of you're a retired school teacher, correct?
Yes, social studies.
Social studies, okay.
Yeah, and middle school social studies. Have to be a little wacky to teach that age group, but hey, it worked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. and the same. So did you jump right into writing? Right after you retired, or were you writing a little bit before you retired?
I was actually writing right off from college.
Okay.
And when I took this great Vermont history course with Senator Graham Newell, who was at Linden State College, professor there, and he just got me so excited about Vermont history. When I had my first teaching assignment, which was in Coventry, it was requested that teachers sit down and write with the students. Okay. So I penned this short mystery, and that's where it started.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were while you were teaching, you're able to sit down and write your stories. And I got to tell you that that if anybody's interested, definitely go check out Ray's website. It's called Mystery for Me, the number 4, mysteryforme.com.
Correct.
And you have on there, you have a book of 3, the BT and Jimmy Adventure series.
Yes.
Is kind of like your flagship book. And then we can talk a little bit later in the show about your other books, which is like the spy Chip Armageddon.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have a memoir based off of your father-in-law's work in the China, Burma, India theater in World War II. But I got to say, I am fascinated by the BT and Jimmy Adventure series. What I love about it from looking at it is that it's kind of a throwback to a nostalgia of like the child detective series that you would remember, but also, as you said in there, it also has some life lessons involved in there. There's you throw in a little bit of some history for people, so whether they like it or not, they're going to be learning as it goes. So,
sure.
Talk to us a bit about how you kind of got into writing. Like, for instance, the inspiration behind, say, like book 1, for instance, The Mystery of the Silver Statue.
Well, like I said, the inspiration initially was Professor Graham Newell. And as I was writing, when I first started teaching, writing along with my students, they asked her, if I would read my story. Okay. And I read this short story. I mean, it was just a couple of pages, and they just loved it. And they said, "Oh my God, we got to hear more." And so from then on, I just continued to write a little bit year after year. I moved from Coventry that first half year I was there, and took a full-time job at Barton Academy in graded school. Mm-hmm. And I was teaching middle school history, and 6th graders I was teaching Vermont history.
Okay.
And so every year when we got to the point where we were talking about the French and Indian War and the lost silver statue of that era, I would go back to my book, and it would inspire me to write some more. Okay. Well, when I got done the manuscript, or thought I was done, and started sending it out, I got this reply from an editor who said, "Thanks, but no thanks. Here's a thought. What's going to make your book different than others out there sitting on the shelf?" Right. And so that's when it kind of hit me that, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my 2 oldest sons as inspiration. And so my older son became BT, and the younger one, Jimmy. And my older son actually had a brain tumor at 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so using what I knew about that whole situation, I was able to incorporate it into the books. Okay. And I guess I decided that the French and Indian War was very interesting at that point, and so I could come up with an idea for a mystery. And when Graham Newell talked about this statue, this missing statue of French and Indian War period, I thought, there's a story there. And so I started doing more research and learning about the Native Americans across the border in Quebec at Odanak, and then used that research to include it in the book. And so, being a teacher, I had to include the history aspects, and so I really enjoy that part as well, as mysteries. However, I think I was being interviewed by someone at the Chronicle in Barton, and afterwards she said, "You know what? You write history mysteries. That's what you write." Like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so how much, because as you said, as a teacher, and you want to add some of the historical significance to stuff, do you find that easier or more challenging as a writer, because it kind of paints you into a point of, I can't lie about this, or I can't fictionalize some of these events? So is it make it easier in the sense that you already know what happened historically, so you don't have to like make something up, or is it makes it harder for you as trying to fit a plot point in because you know that it's not as historically correct?
Well, that can be a little tricky, because in my second book, The Mystery of the Brick Kingdom, Kingdom is actually an industrial area in Barton, and I could see it from my classroom on the 4th floor. And that's where Barton was kind of well noted back in the 1800s for their industry. And the industry was along the river, which flowed from Crystal Lake down into the Barton River. And many businesses grew up along there and used the water power from the falls to power their businesses. So I kind of thought there might be a story there. So after the silver statue, I did some more research on the Brick Kingdom, and it still exists to some extent in that there are lots of brick buildings in there. Most of them have fallen down, but it was kind of it's a cool place to write about. And also just above that is a lumber business. It used to be a grain business. It's called E.M. Brown Incorporated, and it's very unusual because where the water flows along the falls, there was a sluice was built so the water would flow right into this E.M. Brown building and power all of their equipment. So I got to see all of this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, this is really cool. I know there's a mystery here. So the hard part was figuring out what that mystery was, because it's usually about buried treasure.
Right.
Mark Twain, one of his quotes that I really like is that at some point in every kid's life, they've got to go out searching for buried treasure. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I remember way back when I was a kid, my grandfather saying, yeah, during the Depression, my father buried jars of money out in the yard. I think it was under that maple tree over there. So my brothers and I hustled out there, and we dug up the yard. My grandfather laughed and laughed. We found nothing. But we hunted for buried treasure, and so that was sort of an inspiration as well.
Right. And so I noticed too is like that, this came out, your second book in the series it came out in 2012. The first one was in 2011. But the third one came out in 2017. So there was like a 5-year lag there.
Yeah. What happened was in 2011, I retired from the classroom at that point, and we took a jaunt south to Florida and spent part of the year down there. And at Disney World, I started writing about a mystery at the Pirates of the Caribbean, and so I got back up here, and And my daughter-in-law, who does the illustrations for the book, said, no, this is not cool. Your books are all about the Northeast Kingdom. I said, yeah, okay, that's that's what I need to do. Right. So I changed. I just totally gutted the story and changed it not completely, but quite a bit. And so the third book now is going to be the fourth book, because
okay,
the book coming out this fall or this next winter is going to be called The Mystery of the Mountaintop Treasure.
Ooh, okay.
It's around Jay Peak.
Okay.
And also the old space research facility, which is still up there, and it bordered the United States and Canada. It was an unusual business. They made huge guns.
Okay.
That would fire 40 or 50-mile missiles. And so it was a very intriguing area. So anyway, I put that aside, and when we moved back here, I was in Derby Line, and one day the local paper, the Newport Daily, had this article about a group of investigators who were coming to Derby Line. They were called the Paranormal Investigators of New England. Mm-hmm. And they were headed to the Haskell Library and Opera House.
Okay.
Which is an unusual story in itself, because it sits right on an international border. Half of it's in the United States, half of it in Canada. And actually in the theater, there's a line that marks the demarcation of here. If you sit on this side, you're in Canada. If you sit on this side watching whatever performance, you're in the United States. And so when I saw that article, I said to my youngest son, I said, Nick, grab your camera. And I grabbed my notebook. I said, we're going to the Haskell. So we raced up to the Haskell, and we got there, and the investigators were just setting up. And so they went through all this stuff. They said, there's been lots of stories about strange happenings at the Haskell. And I'm like, oh, there's a mystery here. So I began to write the mystery of the haunted opera house.
Okay.
And that's where that came in. And so I set aside the Mountaintop Treasure.
Okay.
And so that's why that period of time is kind of like I was going every which way, not sure what I was going to write or what I was going to finish. So I actually finished the the haunted opera house and got that published.
And so that's pretty interesting. So how many do you have? I guess, is there are each one of these stories, is there a continuing meta plot, or each one of these stories is kind of contained in its own beginning, middle, end?
Each one can be contained. However, the characters are all the same. Okay. And in fact, in the second one, they introduce a couple of friends in the story, and they all continue through the next books in the series as well.
Okay.
But the general themes are mysteries and histories, and the whole idea of this young man who had a very difficult time growing up, and just feelings of inadequacy, and how he really had to persevere to get to the point where he went to college, he became a computer techie, and did some great things.
Right.
And so the book kind of follows along
that way,
along those lines. Yeah, perseverance.
Perseverance is important. So we got Danny Staton, one of our friends of the show, just asked, are they available in audiobook?
Not yet. I'm kind of thinking about how I'm going to go about doing that, but yeah, I need to do it at some point.
Yeah.
They make great Christmas gifts.
Right. And then, so is this kind of like, is the BT and Jimmy adventure series, or is there a timelessness about it, or does it take place in a certain time period itself?
I would say it's pretty timeless.
Okay.
Yeah. They harken back to the stories I read when I was a kid, the mysteries.
Right.
You know,
Like the Hardy Boys and the
Hardy
Nancy
Boys.
Drews and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have an idea of like you want to just keep writing the series until it ends, or is there going to be like I'm going to do 10 or I'm going to do 5, or do you have?
I don't have any specific number, but I always have these thoughts just rolling around in my brain, like, oh yeah, I know the next one is going to be the mystery of the Men from Magog monster.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I've always been intrigued about Lake Men from Magog, and I thought I saw something way back when I was in college, and I'm like, yeah, there's definitely a mystery there.
Do you have like, is there like any theme, like for instance, maybe doing like one book per town in the Northeast Kingdom or anything like that?
I haven't really thought about that, but I've been to different schools. Like I was down in Barnet, and the kids were like, "Oh, I know what you could write about down here." So it's like, yeah, and just I was at a library group in Barton, and I think the Haunted Opera House was just coming out, and like I had people saying, "Oh, you've got to write about all these stories about these haunted places and these haunted houses," and
Right.
So every town has their story.
There's a ton of them. Yeah, we had, for instance, in Groton, one of the stories about Kettle Pond got its name because there's supposed to be like this treasure of money hidden inside a kettle. Because there's this robber who I think was printing money or something like that, but he ended up having to hide money. So, oh yeah, you're right. Every town's got an adventure. I mean, you're onto something here, Ray. I bet you can.
I haven't put it in that perspective, but yeah, I think you may have just given me some
ideas. You got there's enough town. I think there's enough towns in the Northeast Kingdom alone, in Essex and Caledonia and Essex, Caledonia,
and
Orleans County. Yeah, there's plenty of towns in there.
Oh, yeah,
keep you busy for years. Yeah,
for sure.
And do you see? So I guess my question is, and I'm curious to ask you this: when you sit down to write, there's like what they call them, plotters and pantsers, where you either have you have a very specific thing. Are you in charge of the story, or is it BT and Jimmy? Do you write in like, and are you, as you're typing it out or writing, like, I guess they're going here, like, how does that work for you?
That's a great question, and I think I've evolved over time.
Yeah.
Early on, like with the silver statue and with the Brick Kingdom and the Haunted Opera House, it was all, the story just took me.
Right.
And there were times I can remember sitting, and I'll write anywhere. Sometimes it's in the car waiting for my son who was at track and field practice, and sometimes it's in the office. Other times, wherever, waiting for someone at an appointment. In these first 3 books, actually in the 4, the story just took me.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Brick Kingdom, I was sitting there and I was just totally stuck. I'm like, I don't know how to get. I know where I want to go, but I'm not sure how to get from here to there. And so I was sitting there one day morning after breakfast at the bar, and I just was thinking about it. I put it away for a couple of weeks, and I came back to it, and I'm like, I jumped up, like, I got it. And my daughter's like, what is your problem? I got it. I got from here to there. And so, it came to me, and that's what the books have done, other than the new book that I just released last year, and that's an adult thriller.
Right.
And that was very different for me because, one, it was an adult story, and 2, I had taken an online course from James Patterson, who is obviously, he's the guru of mysteries and thrillers. Right. And one thing hit home to me, which was, he said, you should just kind of outline where you're going, outline each chapter. And I did. And I outlined 80 some odd chapters.
Wow.
And it took me from where I wanted to start to where I wanted to end.
Yeah, so talk to us a bit about your latest book. This book here, Spy Chip Armageddon. This came out just last year.
Yes.
And it's one of your biggest books, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's an adult thriller. It's nearly 400 pages, and I was just surfing the internet, like I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, and I came across this interesting article on what's called a RFID, which is a radio frequency identification device. And so it's a chip, and you've probably heard of them now. People are implanting them actually in their hands, here, here, between the thumb and the first finger.
Okay.
And they can be used. They can be read by a reader.
Huh.
So there are companies out there who are actually using them, implanting them in their employees, so that they can get into the building, so that they can go to the snack machine and just wave their hand over it. And it's just, this intrigued me. I said, oh, wow, this is crazy. And then I started doing some research, and some of the research was very biblical.
Right.
Saying, oh, this is the mark of the devil. This is where we're going in society. And so that kind of gave me the impetus to write about this story, and I started it. I was with my daughter at a dance competition down in Massachusetts, and while I wasn't watching, I was back in the hotel room writing. And so I kind of wrote the first chapter, and I said to my daughter and my wife, well, what do you think? Is there a story here? And so they were kind of unsure, but that's when I sat down. I said, yeah, definitely there is. And then I outlined the chapters and figured out who my characters are going to be and where it was going to end up. And it ended up right here in the Northeast Kingdom.
Wow. So this takes place in the Northeast Kingdom too?
Well, from Washington, D.C., the Burlington area, to Washington, D.C., to Puerto Rico, to California, and to an island off the coast of Alaska.
Wow.
So it's kind of like spread out all over the place.
So I guess my question, because you have your daughter-in-law Stephanie also did some illustrations for this as well. Is there any like Easter eggs or something in here for any of your BT and Jimmy adventure series like readers? Did any references or anything hidden in all that your folks would be able to, your other readers would be able to not give them a nod to at all?
I'm not sure I understand where you're going.
So I get, like, is there any Easter eggs or any like things in the background of this story at all that would make a reference to your BT and Jimmy series?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Yeah. There are references all over. For sure. And family members and people saying, "That's me. You're talking about me there."
Yeah.
Or things like that. I just had a cousin from visit from Florida, and she said, "Oh my God, what I really loved about it was not only the book itself, but because you talked about and you wrote about places." And she said, "I could see them because I had seen them."
Yeah.
And it was great.
Right. Is this part of the same world as the BT and Jimmy series at all? No, it's completely separate.
Completely separate.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
In fact, when I pulled from characters, I pulled from characters close to me, and then characters that I just made up in my mind because I said, I need this character, and I really don't know them, but I'm going to create them.
Right. Okay. And so my question for you too, and my follow-up to that is, when you have something set up and you have it written out, do you use anybody for like, who's your proofreaders? Do you have like a kind of like a copy or a line editor? Who do you hand it over to say, hey, can you check this out?
Yeah. First, I start with my wife, Mary. She is still a teacher, and she's taught everything from English to special ed, and so she's pretty good at that kind of stuff.
Right.
And definitely from the very raw beginnings, she can look at things and say, "Oh, what's going on here?" But also, my daughter-in-law Stephanie, who does the illustrations, she'll get it read off and then come back with her thoughts on things from really from every chapter. Right. And then we'll sit down and with the kids' books, Steph and I will sit down and decide what the pictures are going to be inside, and then she'll do all the sketches inside as well as the cover.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so she helps. She helps design the cover for your books and everything.
She actually is she has so much inspiration for seeing those kind of things that I don't even necessarily see. Okay. And so, and I don't even see the cover. I mean, I don't say this is what I want on the cover.
Right. She
reads it, and then from there she starts with ideas, and then she sends me them and says, "What do you think?"
Right.
And I'm always blown away, like, "Oh my God, this is so cool. How do you do that?" Because I can barely, I can create a stick figure, and you might not even know it was a stick figure.
Right.
So I have no talent in that way.
So in your series, in your series, do you have anything do you have basically like rules of physics or something that fit specifically in your writing? For instance, like, an example of like when you have like the haunted thing, is it like Scooby-Doo in the sense where there's always an explanation, or do you have things that have?
Sometimes there isn't. In the haunted house, there really isn't an explanation.
Okay.
Two very different things happen. Okay. And there is buried treasure, but there's also that haunted aspect. Right. And that never gets resolved.
Do you at that point, do you have like a kind of like your folders or whatever to have an explanation that but you're not going to ever share it with your readers? Or like maybe in book 7 I might make a reference to this, or do you kind of lay out some breadcrumbs for folks at all?
Yeah, actually, pretty much at the end of each book, I kind of give them a taste of what the next book is going to be like.
Okay.
Like saying at the end of the Brick Kingdom, I talked about, one of the girls says, my aunt has this, lives in Derby Line, and there's this crazy story about ghosts at the Haskell Opera House. And then BT says, "Ooh, another mystery." And then it kind of ends.
Right.
Yeah, and in my first one, I wasn't sure where I was going with that, but I did leave the door open because I say at the very end, mysterious notes shoved under the door for BT, and then it ends.
Oh, okay.
So the note, then I pick up with the Brick Kingdom.
Okay.
And that's what the note was all about.
Right.
Yeah, one kind of leads to the next mystery.
And when you write your drafts, how many drafts does it take before you're saying, "All right, this is good. I'm going to get this"?
I do quite a bit of speaking at schools. Right. And one, because a lot of teachers know me in the area, and and they love to have me in, and the kids do too. So, wow, I forgot where I was going with that.
about the rewrites. How do you do that?
About the rewrites. So kids are often asking about that, and if they don't, I will tell them, you know what, I go over my books probably anywhere from 20 to 25 times that I'm going through this thing and rewriting parts of it. Right. And sometimes even, just throwing out a whole section or a whole chapter or fitting it in somewhere else.
Right. Have you ever had been a point where you like really liked a scene or really liked like what happened, or a character interaction, but you knew it didn't go anywhere. It wasn't part of a the larger plot? Did you ever have to like pull those out and maybe just like add them into a different book, or keep it to the side and say, I'm going to try to find a way to use this later?
Oh, definitely. And I do have a proofreader, editor, and send it out. And then when I get it back, it's like, it's like just so full of ideas from the proofreader and editor.
Right.
What are you thinking here? This doesn't, you don't think this works, do you? Maybe it'll work somewhere else. So yeah, that really gets me thinking,
Right.
how can I incorporate this, or do I just drop it?
Right. And what were some of the lessons as a writer itself? Because we do have, like writers that we either will watch or listen to this on a podcast later. Is like, what are some of the things you wished you knew that you know now that you wish you knew when you're writing your first book?
I wish that I had known how difficult it would be to market it. Because the first publisher was kind of new, and I was growing up with them, and there wasn't a great amount of marketing, but I thought I could do it better myself, and so I decided that I was just going to go it on my own, and I was going to self-publish, and it was still just as difficult.
Right.
To get it out there and get your name out there.
Right. And have you seen too, is like like other places as well, as like, as you say, is like, would you recommend for someone who is looking to get their book published to either self-publish it or look for a publisher?
I really like self-publishing because I am in control.
Right.
I'm in control of everything. And, for some people that might not work so well,
right.
But it works for me.
Okay. And so as you mentioned before, you were going to have, your book 4 is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
You said this fall, correct?
I'm hoping by Christmas time.
Okay.
The Mystery of the Mountaintop Treasure.
And is the Spy Chip Armageddon, is there going to be a sequel to that? Or
I've started it.
Okay.
I have, yes. Yeah. Okay. And so I kind of float back and forth between but I've also, I've jumped into another mystery, BT and Jimmy mystery with the Men from Magog Monster. Yeah.
And do you have, and so let's talk a bit too about you also came out in I think it was in 2012 as well, your the memoir book that you wrote based off of your father-in-law.
Yes, it was about, I was still teaching, and it was in the summer, and it was about almost 10 years ago. And my father-in-law was in his late 80s. I think he was 88 or 89. And I said to my wife, your dad's not going to be around many more years. I've heard all these stories over the years about his experiences in World War II. And so I'm going to sit down with him, and I'm going to get his story. And I did that summer, and we conversed back and forth. I spent some days with him, and then he would call me and he'd say, "Oh, by the way, I just remembered this." And so there's still there are things that to this day that I could probably add, and that was almost 10 years ago, and he's still alive. He'll be 99 next month. And it was extraordinary to me to imagine this. I think he was 21 years old, and he had been married just a couple of weeks, and he was off to I think it was Fort Devens in Massachusetts, and from there to Kansas City, where he trained on horseback in the cavalry.
Wow.
No kidding. Yeah. And from there to the West Coast, and then on board a ship, which took them, like 2,500 soldiers, took them first to Australia and then up to India. And they crossed India by train. And then he jumped in with another unit. So the cavalry thing was no help to him whatsoever. And this unit crossed the southern part of the Himalaya mountains, leading pack mules with everything that they needed to surprise the Japanese in the southern jungles of China.
Wow.
Where he saw quite a bit of combat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it was just an astounding story. I said, I just, imagine this young lad from northern Vermont, from the Northeast Kingdom, who ends up in the other side of the world.
Right.
He was in Shanghai, and he was in Beijing, and he was in the southern part of China, and he was actually in Inner Mongolia after the war, when the communists and the nationalists were trying to figure out some kind of peace arrangement. So it was just an amazing story.
And you kind of like wrote this kind of like also as a gift to him as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And he had brought back pictures, but I also researched and found pictures of things that he had talked about, like the USS John Pope, who, the ship that he went over on, and was then my illustrator was able to put it all together.
Your daughter-in-law, she did that too. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So as a writer, what were some of the significant differences between writing a biography and then writing some fiction prose?
I found it much more difficult to write the biography.
Really?
Yeah, I really did.
Okay.
Because it was just a different style that it was kind of foreign to me.
Right.
And so, it took me some time quite a bit of reworking to say, to figure out how I was going to say things. That didn't sound, like just it was a bunch of facts.
Right. Yeah.
Because I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to make it more personal, with some of his thoughts and some of his feelings.
Right.
And what was going on while he was there.
And is there been anything that you're thinking about? Hey, I want to do another biography, or like there was a lot of energy put into this that you wouldn't want to write another biography for a while?
No, I'm not really interested in doing that. I mean, it was a special case, and I think I'm probably going to leave it right there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And do you, and so because you came out with that book around the same time, because you came out with like 3 books within like 2 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
The first BT and Jimmy series, and then you came out with the second one and this one both at that same time.
And I was really gung ho at that point. Once the first book, The Silver Statue, was published, I was so gung ho that it took me years to write The Silver Statue and get it to the point where I was willing to send it to publishers.
Right.
And once it was published, I wrote The Brick Kingdom one summer.
Right.
In just a couple of months.
Yeah. And you just kind of you started building that momentum, and then as you say, there was that as we look at it, there's that 5-year span, but you were writing during that time anyway, so it wasn't like you were.
Just the order of the BT and Jimmy adventure series got kind of mixed up, and I decided that I was going to jump to something else and then come back to which is going to be number 4 in the series, The Mountaintop Treasure.
Right. And so you have, and as you said, you have, you're getting a sequel for the sequel for your spy Chip Armageddon.
Mm-hmm.
How is it different to write for children, like for the young adults, as to which one do you see more freeing or more exciting for you as an author?
Definitely writing for kids.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems to flow.
Yeah.
More easily. And I can just take off and go with it, and it just seems to almost write itself.
Right.
Whereas the other one, the adult thriller, there was much more research to that.
Okay.
Not to say I don't research the BT and Jimmy series, because I do, but being a history teacher, a social studies teacher for 30 years, and teaching Vermont studies, and particularly the Barton area and the area up north here, next to the border. I've got a lot of that foundation,
Right.
and then it's just adding to it.
Right.
Whereas with the Spy Chip Armageddon, it was totally, wow, I've got to go out and research all of this stuff, and what I've got to figure out California. Oh yeah, let's take a trip, which was kind of cool.
And you had but are you always going to make sure, at least like in your Spy Chip Armageddon series, there's always going to be a stopover in Vermont? You're always going to make sure there's always going to be like a
yes,
something
definitely.
happen in Vermont.
Yeah, because Jackson, the main character, Jackson LaPointe, it really is a government employee, and he works out of the service center up in St. Albans.
Okay.
So there's that connection.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. And so this is exciting stuff. So talk to us, Ray, a bit about that right now that you have there. You've got any of, now that with COVID kind of winding down again, do you have any event plans set up, or?
I don't. I've done quite a few virtual speaking engagements with the schools in the area.
Right.
So that's been kind of cool. And at this point, I don't have anything. I'm hoping to push that a little more in the fall.
Right. Yeah. That's good. So this has been great. I'm excited now. I as you're talking, I'm just thinking what I love about, because it's based in Vermont, and I'm Vermont. Mm-hmm. There's like my gears are spinning on thinking about all the people that I want to buy your books for right now too. So.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, and the funny part is, I get adults who buy them or buy the books in the series and say, yeah, but I love them too. Right. They're good, quick reads, and they're easy reads.
Right. No, do you have because on your website you can click on it; it'll take us straight to the Amazon site. But do you actually have books? If somebody wanted a book signed by you, is there a way they could do that?
I haven't quite figured that out yet. Other than contacting me, because I came through the website and I can send it.
Right.
Because I have books right here. I can just sign and send.
Okay. All right. So someone could do that too.
Yeah, I have done that.
All right. And what's your and so the easiest way that somebody can to find you would probably be then going to mysteryforme.com, correct?
Either mysteryforme.com, yes, or going to Amazon, clicking on books, and then just typing in my name.
Right. And they have to go. So Raymond C. Perkins Jr.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Cool. Which from my website, it'll take you directly there anyway. So.
Okay. Right. So yeah, definitely mystery4me.com. You have all your books on there. Your BT and Jimmy Adventure series is on there. Your additional titles, which is your, as we said, there's Spy Chip Armageddon, and also the memoir you wrote about Maurice E. LeClaire, A Vermonter's Memories of the CBI Theater in World War II. And you're getting quite the library coming up here, Ray, of books that you have. So,
yeah, and hoping to continue that. COVID slowed me down a little bit. I'm not sure why. I did contract COVID back in November. Wow. And I was pretty sick for a couple of months.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. So it was tough. I mean, the 2 weeks after I contracted it were really bad, and after that, it was just I was tired all the time. I had to sleep every day. I had to nap, which it was a good excuse. My wife said. But so it has slowed me down some.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm excited to see book 4 and then book 5, and it sounds like you already got some ideas for other
Absolutely.
books coming out.
Yeah, those ideas just keep churning around and calling to me.
Well, thanks a lot, Ray. It's been a genuine pleasure talking to you, and I'm excited to see more of your work now.
Well, it's great talking to you. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Yeah. So we'll get right into it. And then
All right.
Yeah. Because I know, I mean, as a retired teacher, do you still like everything going to be right on time and everything like that? Too?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I always, all my meals are eaten in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You got to hit the bathroom and eat. And
Yep.